You guys are able to see my screen, right? Hello. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one second. Yeah. What we discussed in the previous class, guys? Guys, what we discussed in the previous class?
EKS.
So, EK is where we are. We install the Kubernetes, right? Right?
Yes, sir.
So, we installed where we installed. Where we install the Kubernetes.
AWS.
In the EK setup. So, what are the components, guys? Kubernetes components. Hmm? So, what are the Kubernetes components, guys? Ramki, you know, right? Already.
Pod.
Pod. The second one is services.
Services.
Third one is namespaces. So fourth one is replication
Plus
controller. So fifth one is, so what is the fifth one? Replication set.
schema.
Replica set, you know, right? You know replica set? What is replica set? Ramki? Deployment. Eighth one is stateful set. Ninth one is config map and secrets. Tenth one is ingress controller. Yes, understood. So what is a pod? What is a pod? What is a pod in the algorithm? I will told you, right? It's a logical unit. It's a logical unit. So within the pod, we can run the containers. Within the pod, we can run the containers. Right? What is pod? Pod is a smallest small is a smallest building block in Kubernetes cluster. Right? Pod is a smallest building block in Kubernetes cluster, and in Kubernetes, it's a smallest building block in Kubernetes cluster. In Kubernetes, every container will be created inside the pod only. Right? In Kubernetes cluster, every container will be created inside the pod only. Inside the pod only. Right? Inside the pod only. Pod always pod always runs inside the node, right? Always runs inside node. Where the pod will be created, guys? The pod will be created. Just demo. Pod is the smallest building block in Kubernetes cluster. In Kubernetes, every container will be created inside the pod only. Pod always run in the inside the node. Pod always run inside the node. Yeah, you see? So pod will run on inside the node only. This is the node. In this node, a pod will be running, and the pod inside the pod a container will be creating. Inside the pod, a container will be creating. Right, guys? So and pod represents the running process. What is that? Pod represents running process. Pod represents the running process. Pod means, what is it, guys? Pod means a group of containers. Group of containers running on a node. What is a pod, guys? A pod is nothing but a group of containers will be running on a running on a node. Running on a node. So we can create multiple pods in a single node. So pod means group of containers running on a node, group of containers running on a node. So we can create multiple we can create multiple pods on single node. Multiple pods on single node. So every pod will have a unique IP address. Every pod will have unique IP addresses. What is that? Unique IP addresses. Pod is the smallest building block. Pod is the smallest building block in Kubernetes. In Kubernetes, every container will be created inside the pod only. Pod always runs inside the node. Pod represents the running process. Pod means group of containers running in a node. So we can create multiple pods on a single node. So every pod will have a unique IP address. Every pod, so we'll have a unique IP address. So for example, so what this is a uh, master node and these all are the worker nodes, for example. So this is also a worker node. So right, so the every container, so what this is, for example, this is a container. So sorry, this is a pod. This is a pod. So pod is the smallest building block. A pod contains number of containers. A pod contains number of containers. So, but pod having a unique IP address. Pod having the unique IP address. Guys, understood?
Yes, sir.
What this is? This is a
Pod.
pod. So this is a pod. What this is? This is a pod. Okay. What this is? This is a what this is, guys? This is a
Container.
yes. What this is? This is a container. This is what this is? This is a container, right? A pod having the unique IP address. So container having the IP address or pod having the IP address? The pod
Pod.
contains the yes. Is that the pod contains the unique item. Pod is the smallest building block in Kubernetes cluster. In Kubernetes, every container will be creating inside the pod only. Pod always runs inside the node. This is the node. What this is? This is a node. A pod contains, a pod runs inside the node only. So pod represents the running process. Pod means group of containers running in a node. We can create multiple pods in a single node. Every pod will have a unique IP address. So we can create pods in two ways. Right? So we can create the pods in two ways. One is interactive approach. The other one is so we can create pods. We can create the pods in two ways. Right? So one is interactive approach. The other one is second one is declarative. What is that? So declarative approach. What is that? So declarative approach and interactive approach. So interactive approach is nothing but how you can run now. So for example, kubectl run now hyphen e pod name image equal to image hyphen name hyphen generate pod v1. So right, so this is the interactive approach. This is the interactive approach. So what is the declarative approach? Most of the people are using a declarative approach. So declarative approach is nothing but a Kubernetes manifest YML files. So declarative approach is so Kubernetes manifest YMLs YML files. So YML files, right? So Kubernetes manifest YML. So what is Kubernetes manifest YML? In the Kubernetes manifest YML, so what it contains? The file contains, so the manifest file contains hyphen. So then API version kind metadata spec and three dogs. What is that? Kubernetes manifest YML file. So Kubernetes manifest YML file. A file contains so hyphen API version kind metadata spec. So three dots. So this is the manifest file contained. So what is API version? So API version is something like a the version of the API pod or V1 or something like a kind. Okay. So hyphen API version kind of metadata specco. So this is the most important. If you want to create a file, we need a API version. So API version is nothing but a V1 or V2. So right, the kind is nothing but a pod. So what you are trying to install, what you are trying to create. I am trying to create a pod. So we will provide the metadata. Metadata is nothing but a data of the data is nothing but a metadata. A spec contains the container. Spec contains the containers, right? So here, so we will use here we can create the in the spec. Spec is nothing but a specifications. In the specification, we can create the containers. So API version is nothing but we will provide the version, and kind is nothing but so we want to create a pod or service or deployment. So which type of file you are trying to create it? You are trying to create it a YAML file with a pod, or a YAML file with a service, or YAML file with a deployment or replication control or replica set. That is nothing but a kind. In the Kubernetes components, or you want to create a pod, or kind equal to pod, kind equal to service, kind equal to namespaces, or kind equal to replication set, kind equal to daemon set, kind equal to deployment set. Okay, so this is nothing but a kind. So what is the API version? API version is nothing but the Kubernetes version. The Kubernetes version is nothing but a V1. So V1, V2, so the V1 is the API version. Metadata is nothing but the data of the data. Spec contains the container. So what you want to create, you want to create a pod. Inside the pod, what you want to create, you want to create a containers, right? So this is the a manifest file of family. Manifest file of family. Guys, understood? Okay. So this is the way you can create the manifest files for the Kubernetes. So, for example, you already know, right? So, main.tf.
Sir.
So, main.tf is the Terraform file. So, in the Terraform file, something like a AWS, AWS provider region, something like resource, resource, AWS underscore instance, resource AWS underscore instance. In the instance, what we call it as a web one is the instance name. So here, so we can open and close the braces, right? In the resources, what we need to provide instance type and instance name. So this is the way. So how you can create the manifest files in the Kubernetes? We can create the manifest files in the Kubernetes like a API version, kind, metadata, spec, containers. Understood? Guys, understood? Speak out, guys. Is
Sir,
able
one
to hear?
second.
Yeah,
Metadata,
I will
what
tell
about?
you. I will show you. Yeah. For example, if you go to the Kubernetes, right? So in the Kubernetes, what we are something like a so load balancer dot so deployment file, so my Tomcat to pod svc, a simple pod. So for example, if you want to create a simple pod, so what is that, guys? API version equal to v1, kind equal to pod. What you are trying to create a so we are trying to create a pod, metadata equal to something like my Tomcat name. The name of the metadata equal to Tomcat. So labels app, for example, this is label is indicated with the app server or DB server. Labels equal to app. My Tomcat is the so something like application server. Spec. A spec contains the containers. What container you want? So the image. So the image should be a so the image should be comes from the local. The image should be comes from the GitHub repository. The image comes from the GitHub GitLab the repository. Right. The ports are container port equal to 8080. So just so if you want to create a pod, inside the pod we need to create a one container. That container is Tomcat container. Okay, so you can use this spec file. You can use this simple pod YAML file to create the a pod to create a pod. Guys, understood? Understood?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So API version is nothing but a version of the Kubernetes kind equal to what you want to create a pod or a service or a deployment or a replication set. So a spec contains the specifications. Spec is nothing but a specifications. A specification contains the containers. So where it comes from, the container comes from the repository. In which repository? If it may be a Docker Hub repository, or if it may be a the Nexus repository, or if it may be a artifact repository. So they will come from the so wherever you added, right? So it will becomes from the local, or it will becomes from the Docker Hub repository, or it will comes from the remote repository, either GitLab, Bitbucket, or GitHub. Guys, we need to provide the path of this. path of the image. Guys, understood? So I'm copying this one, guys, for a simple. So what is that? A simple Kubernetes, Kubernetes pod manifest IML, manifest OML. So Ansible also created, playbooks also run through the AML only, right? AML is a yet another markup language. So right, you guys can copy this. So IPN hyphen API version equal to V1, kind equal to pod, metadata, name by the Tomcat 9, labels is nothing but a app server. This which server? This is app server, DB server. Label equal to my Tomcat, spec containers, name my Tomcat, image Hare Krishna 857, my Tomcat, ports equal to hyphen container port 8080. So this is nothing but a simple, guys, what this is. So this is a simple,
Pod.
simple AML file, right? Let's try to create a simple AML file. Oh, we need to install again, right? AWS Amazon.com, console.com. So in the console.com, sign into console, sign into the AWS console. Yeah, JTech continue. Next, sign in. Yeah, I need to provide the MFA, right? 1012387. So 012 387 is my MFA. The third one. Yeah, this is MFA we need to provide again. So what is the MFA? 442758. Okay, this is my MFA. We need to run again commands. So it will 5 to 10 minutes, right? Meanwhile, then we can tell you the so long time. Already instance is running, right? But the instance, yeah. So connect to the instance. Mm, public DNS, right? So we will connect this to public DNS, public 50. We can connect from 50. Okay. So connect from 50. So what is this, guys? This is a Ubuntu machine, right? So what we provided, what is the credentials? Browse. Which one, guys? I forgot that. Let me check. So instances. Here, if you see 360-degree key. So we used the 360-degree key for key pair. Okay. Yeah, open. Accept. What is the username, guys? Ubuntu is the username. And sudo su. I want to change the settings, change settings, appearance, change settings, appearance, change, hold, waiting, like, like. We need to install. We can install this. The basic case setup. Doing this one done. So what is the CSS structure? We want to connect it from the ESS. KCTL, KCTL must create region is produced on your type of data matter zones US is 21, US is 20, 1B. The name should be infected, right? We create the so it will create the cluster guys. Meanwhile, what you can do, yeah, now you understood, right? How to create the pod aml file. So this is a aml file for the just a simple, what is that? Simple pod.aml. What is that? So simple pod.aml in the simple p.aml. So we can use, so we can create this way to create a aml simple manifest file. So next one, display all pods which are created. Display all pods which are created. kubectl, kubectl get pods. What is that? Kubectl get pods. So it will get the pods. So last time we showed, right? Kubectl get nodes. So we can get the nodes. So kubectl get pods. We can get the pods. So as of now, the pods are not created. So when you run this right, it will create a one pod. So then you will get the pod list. So create pods using pod manifest. What is that? Create a pods using pod manifest. How to create the pods using pod manifest, guys? Create the pods using pod manifest.
Hmm.
CTL. Yeah, tell me. CTL. Apply hyphen F. What is that? Pod YAML file. What is that? So pod YAML file. So what is the example, guys? Dollar kubectl apply hyphen F simple pod.aml. So this is the your simple aml file. So right. So next get pod logs. I want to get the pod logs. So how you can get the pod logs? So kubectl logs, kubectl. So kubectl logs pod name. Is that pod name? Okay.
సార్ నాకు ఇప్పుడు రెండు నోట్స్ క్రియేట్ అవుతాయి సార్. ఇప్పుడు క్లస్టర్ మనం అది క్లస్టర్ ఇప్పుడు మనం ఈకేఎస్ క్లస్టర్ ఒకటి
క్రియేట్ అవుతుంది. టూ
క్రియేట్
నోట్స్ క్రియేట్
అవుతుంది సార్.
అవుతున్నాయి.
2 నోట్స్ క్రియేట్ అవుతాయి సార్. ఇప్పుడు
ఉమ్.
ఆ వర్కర్ నోడ్ లో ఇప్పుడు ఒక పాడ్ మళ్ళీ క్రియేట్ చేయాలి సార్ మనం.
లో పాడ్ క్రియేట్ అవుతుంది. అది చూపిస్తాను నీకు అర్థమవుతుంది.
ఓకే సార్.
సో వాట్ ఈస్ దట్ describe చెప్తున్నాను contain okay, describe pod. So describe pod means get more info about pod. More info about the pod. So right, kubectl, kubectl describe pod, pod name, describe pod name of the pod. Okay, so this is the command. So get pod running on which worker node, right? So just it shows the get pods is nothing but it will get the pod or so pods information. But the pod is running on we created two worker nodes, so the pod is running on which worker? How to see? Get pod running on which worker node? Get pod running on which worker node? kubectl kubectl get pods hyphen o wide. So it will list the hyphen o wide is nothing but a so it will list the so get pods running on which worker node. Guys, understood? Guys, understood?
Yes,
Guys,
sir.
Yes, sir.
so note. So what is note? Note is like something like pods we can't pods we can't access outside. Pod we can't access outside. So what is pod? Pod we can access the outside. Outside is nothing but a. So if you want to deploy our application on the container, so we cannot see that website because of pod cannot access outside. Pod cannot access outside. If you want to access the outside, what we can do? We need to expose the. We need to expose pods for outside access outside access using Kubernetes service concept. What is the concept, guys? If you want to expose your pods on the outside, so we need a service concept. So what is this? This is the pod. So this is the service. So this is the service. So what is a service? What is a K8S service? So what is K8S service? What is K8S service? What is the service? Kubernetes service is used to expose pods outside the cluster. Outside the cluster. Understood, guys? Kubernetes service is used to expose pods outside the cluster. Okay. So types of services. So how many types of services? So we have three types of Kubernetes services. So we have three types of Kubernetes service. So one is cluster IP. Second one is node port. Third one is load balancing. So what is that? Third one is load balancer. So Kubernetes service is used to expose pods outside the cluster. So we have three types of Kubernetes service: cluster IP, node port IP, and load balancer. So we need to write a service. What is that? Service manifest YML to YML file to expose pods to expose the pods, right, guys? So we need to write the service manifest and YML file to expose the pods. So how you can write, guys, the same way. So same way we can write it. So the main is kind metadata spec. YPI version kind metadata spec is main. right? So something like what is the kind? Kind is nothing but a pod or a kind is nothing but a service. So kind is service. So metadata. So something like this is my metadata. SVC, SVC service. So not spec labels. So we don't need a label. Okay. Yeah. So SVC and so spec. Yeah. So we here not we don't need to so we don't need to provide the container, right? Just to service. What is the types of service? Service type is node code. What is that guys? Service space is node code. And here, so we need to provide the selector. Selector means in which what is that? Selector means in which app you need to specify. What is the app? So here is the app, right? So in the app, so what we will provide the, so we will provide the app. So selector in the selector. So we need to provide the app colon. What is that? Tomcat. It's a pod label. What is this guys? This is a pod label. What we discussed in the pod label. So we discussed in the pod label. You see, label equal to my tomcat. Okay. So my tomcat. Next app ports. So app is done right. Then ports. Just a selector. Which selector you want to use? So label selector. So which label you want to use? This label we want to use. App tomcat label. Okay. Type node code. Selector app. My tomcat name port. So target port. So what is the port here? We need to provide not a container port. It's a target port. Target port 8080. So what we can here? So we can use the ports and the hyphen port colon 80. This is the host port. So this is a container port. What is this guys? So this is a container port. Guys understood? So this is the port 8080. Right? So this is the way you can write the simple service dot. So this is simple service dot. Okay. So how you can display existing services, display existing services. So how to display the existing services? kubectl get SVC. kubectl get SVC and create. So create Kubernetes service. How to create the Kubernetes service? You can create the kubectl apply hyphen yeah SVC manifest YML. SVC manifest YML. So next display existing display existing service. Display existing services. kubectl kubectl get SVC. kubectl get SVC. So display the existing services. kubectl get SVC. Create a Kubernetes service. kubectl apply if and if. So SVC manifest file. So get display the existing services. kubectl get SVC. kubectl get SVC. Understood? kubectl get pods. kubectl apply -f pod.ml. So kubectl get pods. The same like as a SVC. So what is the difference between here and here? Here a pod. So here pod contains the container. So this container comes from the image. So this in container having the H080 port. Okay. So this is a label. Label is nothing but a, it will find out the this Tomcat is related to something like application or a DB or a messaging queue. Guys understood? This is nothing but a pod. So this is nothing but a, so by default basically pod not exposed to the outside of the Kubernetes cluster. So a pod is exposing inside of the by new default nature. So what is that? So by default nature is, so yeah. So this is the cluster IP. Cluster IP is nothing but a, so inside the cluster. So inside the cluster by default, by default, by default pod having the cluster IP behavior. So what is that? So cloud behavior. Because of inside the pod only we can create outside the pod, so we cannot expose. Right. Inside the pod. Right. So this will not expose, for example, a end user is trying to access this website. But this website is this the website cannot expose because of this is in the this is in the cluster IP. What this is? A pod contains the pod creator pod. That default behavior is cluster IP. Cluster IP is it will not expose the expose outside of the network. It will not expose the outside of the network. Guys understood? So pod something like it's a cluster IP. It will not expose the outside of the network. So if it is a node port or load balancing, it will expose from the outside. What is the answer, guys? What those two are? Node port, load balancer. So load balancer, you can create the load balancer, right? You already know the load balancer. Node port means so it will expose only one IP address. So for example, we have a two ports, right? So for that time, what you can do? So you can expose, you can create the load balancer and expose it. So expose. Understood, right? Yes, understood or no? Let's see if it is created. Yeah, EKS cluster is created. kubectl will get polished. kubectl get polished. kubectl get nodes. You see, so we have a two nodes, guys. One is IP address of 32, another one is 237. Let's see if we create a pod, right? Let's see. So where it will be created. Let's see where it will be created. Okay. VA simple pod dot VA simple pod dot yeah, hyphen API version v1 kind equal to service. So what this is dot with Java. Okay. So for example, this is service. I will need to put no simple, simple. So we start. So this is simple. See, is the service. So now let's try to create a simple pod. What is the pod? Very simple pod down inside. This is a pod. Pod. This is so API version. API version V1 pod. So metadata name my tomcat labels my tomcat 9 spec container my tomcat 9 Krishna 857 my tomcat. Okay. Public queue. Okay. So pod we cannot contact the outside of the network, right? So we can create the VLS R simple service. Okay, so we create a simple service dot review. Insert. Okay, so this is the okay API version kind service metadata my tomcat SVC spec node go to selector app my tomcat ports 80 so target port 8080. So what is the target port, guys? So target port is 8080. Understood? Yeah, port 80, yeah, port 80. Understood? Yes. Is simple part of API version given kind of pod metadata name equal to my tomcat label equal to labels equal to app tomcat spec container name my tomcat image so port so container port. Okay. Yeah. So how to create a pod, guys? How to create a pod? First, we need to describe the pods. So, what are the pods available? kubectl get pods. No namespace, no resources found in the default namespace. Okay, kubectl, guys, kubectl apply hyphen your amplifier. What is that? Simple simple pod dot. Yeah, pod. So my Tomcat name is created. So pod nine pod. So kubectl again you can check the command kubectl get pods. So this time it is showing my Tomcat one by one is running. So ready one by one status running. Restarts 0 is equal to 11 seconds. Okay, is equal to 11 seconds. My Tomcat is running now. Okay, so if you want to get the more info, okay, you want to get the more info, kubectl describe kubectl describe pod name. What is the pod name, guys? The pod name is my Tomcat. Yeah. So this is the description of the pod is kubectl kubectl apply simple dot pod. So pod is created. So one is running kubectl display pods. So name equal to my Tomcat name, namespace default, priority, and IP address of this. So where this pod is created? So the pod is created under the 237 IP address. So start time, app name. So what is the app name? So my Tomcat. So running under the 192.168.16.202 status. So container ID. This is the container ID. Image from this is the image, right? Image ID is this is the image ID. Port equal to 8GB. Host port 0. So state equal to running. State equal to running. Guys understood? So the type reason is from message successfully. Okay. So we are getting these guys. Okay. Yeah. So now we create the service guys. So now we create the service. kubectl apply simple service.ml. So line number 11. Ports result API version find service metadata meta SVC spec type equal to node port spec spec type type node port selector selector app my Tomcat app my Tomcat ports 11 hyphen port 18 target port target port 80. Error validating simple service.ml, error validating the data, validation error, service spec selector, scores invalid type for the IO Kubernetes core version service, selector get array, expected string if you choose the ignore these errors, turn the validation of the validated to false. Oh, right. What is this? So API version, API version V1, kind service only metadata name equal to my Tomcat SPC spec type node port to selector. SCLEC is the word selector. App my Tomcat 900, right? Ports, yeah, yeah, yeah. Port starts from where? Okay, so port here. No, is that target? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So service. So my Tomcat non-SVC service is created, right? So let's see kubectl get STC. So before there is no SVCs, but it created a now my Tomcat 9 SVC node port 10.193.181. Right. So the ports, this is the host port, this is the container port, TCP. Okay. So we can see, we can see the service, we can see service information on node port number assigned by the Kubernetes. Right. So enable node port in security group of worker node in which our pod is running. So pod is running where this is node for public IP. So where exactly it created? It created under the yes kubectl get pods iPhone file. Yeah. So my Tomcat pod is running on the IP address of 192.168.170. So 202. So let's see, 192.168.2. Where exactly the service is running, instances, refresh. Is the IP address? The IP address is 202. 202 is 192.168. Will institute such 192.168. 41 dot. This is the node port public IP. What's the node port public IP address? So 237. So this is the public IP of the node port. So this public node port. The node port number. This the node port number is 30908. 30908 slash with the security group. Security group, subnets, security group. IP address. It is not an hundred. So we get for checking for check address. Okay, this is usually basically where the pod is running 192 to 168.16.20. So the IP address is 192.168.9.237 internal 237. So this is 237. Yeah, so here only that 45 plus. So enable the no add creating food replica field. Don't replica field.
Sir, can't see the screen.
Huh?
Screen sharing off.
Properly once. Actually power down. Yeah, are able to see my student. kubectl. Yeah, this is this is trivial. Can use the question. Generate this. Got what is the IP address? This is the 30908. 30908. My bunch. It is good. Yeah. Root for public IP address. User on with public IP address. Cluster IP. This IP address. Right. So that 237 is a public IP address. Check the security tool. Security tool. Issues table. Issues table. So we are all container history and test policies. Place of any policy maintenance. Now, issued. Consequence. Hey guys, we'll show you tomorrow. I have another class. Huh? So why it is not exposing? Anyway, this is the way we need to expose, but I don't. This is not exposed. Yeah, we'll show you this. Okay, guys, we'll show you tomorrow. Hmm?
Okay.